So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for October 29th, 2020. We'll follow our standard agenda, which was as outlined in issue 942 in the TSC repository. Just a sec, I'm just promoting Miles, who's just joined. Okay, so first of all, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share?
I have one. We have a new repo in our organization called WebIDL-NAPI, the purpose of which is to translate WebIDL files into NAPI calls that will create on the JavaScript side the interfaces that are described in the IDL file and will allow add-on maintainers to implement those interfaces on the native side. It's still very early on and in heavy development, no releases yet. So that's the announcement.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'll add in that we should announce that 14.x went LTS this week. Thanks to everybody who did all that work. Miles, you have an announcement?
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that that's the first I've heard of the WebIDL thing, and I think that's super cool, and I can't wait to hear more about it. That's all.
By all means, check it out.
Sounds good. Any other announcements before we move to the agenda items? If not, we'll go to CPC and board meeting updates. Mary's not here today as our CPC rep, but from the board perspective, there is a board meeting this week. There's nothing new that I have to bring up with them, but if there is something you have in your mind, please let me know in advance and I can do that. In terms of the CPC work, the main things that have been sort of looked at recently is simplifying the proposal process and looking at growth plans and coming up with some examples and some concrete templates that people can use and so forth. So moving on to the issues which were tagged for the agenda. The first one is 34.895, which is adding diagnostic channel. It's on the TSC agenda because it's adding a new namespace, and so we require, I think it's approval from the TSC to do that. Cord mentioned that he does own the namespace in NPM, so there's no chance of collision, and really it's just waiting on 2 TSC members. So I guess the question I had to the team here is there any objections with that landing, and in particular, adding that particular namespace?
I'm sorry, which issue number is this?
This is 34895.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah. It's not. It was added in the comment. I see it now. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I think we clarified before 15 that it didn't. We could do this in 15.1 or 2 or something like this, but we do need the sign off from at least 2 TSC members.
Yeah, it looks like
I think James there was something about James that approved, but it didn't quite count because it was unintended and couldn't be removed or something. But
you can remove approvals, can't you?
I don't know the story. That
anyway.
That was just what was relayed to me, and I didn't really look, to be honest. So
anyway, as long as it lands experimental, so we can remove it if it ends up like having like I can't I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
Okay, so I guess what I was going to go and approve TSC wise if there weren't any objections or concerns from this group. If somebody else could go ahead and do that as well, I think that would be great, because then we could unlock it and get it to land. Okay, anything else people want to discuss or on that one before we move on? If not, let's move to the next one, which is 35788, backporting util types past POSIX and Pathwin32 to 15. I think this actually is in a similar vein in that it's adding some top-level paths, module names. There is some discussion there. And I guess I'm just looking.
So this
It's
isn't
an
about adding
issue.
top level. This is about adding promises API, but also backporting it, right? Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I'm not. I was just thinking. I did a quick read to see why it was on the agenda. You could be right that it's about
This is
backporting
35788,
those.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's there. It's there for backporting because the stuff landed after the cutoff for 15, and
Right. Okay.
yeah, and so we wanted a 15, and I think there's not a lot of controversy here, but we need TSC people to weigh in and say yes or no if there's concerns.
Anybody have any concerns or discussion?
I think for me, like one of the concerns that I have is not with this change itself, but feeling like the policy that we have around adding new named modules and adding these kind of like slash promises patterns are kind of getting in the way of progress. And I'm not saying that we should necessarily like completely throw it out. I know that for a bit we had explored the idea of using like the node, potentially like a node colon namespace, which we do have now. It's just not like enforced, and to the best of my knowledge, I don't think it works in CJS. But I do think that we should be trying to find some sort of pattern, or alternatively decide that we're okay with a little bit more ecosystem breakage, because the amount of friction for these kinds of pull requests is pretty high. And a lot of these things that we're talking about right now likely should have been able to land in 15. And it was this kind of like namespace naming stuff that caused them all to miss the boat.
So I know there was an active discussion at one point, but I guess I haven't heard too much about that recently.
Well, I mean, that's the problem is that there is active discussion and no conclusions. And so, or was active discussion. I mean, like basically there was consensus that we should land new modules in a namespace, but no consensus on what that namespace, my recollection, I could be wrong about this, my recollection, there was no consensus around what that namespace should be, or, and then like a module would come up and it's like, well, do we really want to delay landing this module 6 months while we bike shed on what the process is going to be? So we either got to get serious about what the process is and enforce it, or just decide that we're going to be a little more lax and just land things. And I have a feeling that I don't know that anybody has the fire in them to do all the cat herding and advocacy work that will be necessary to push that issue across the finish line.
I guess the thing, Rich, that I would say at this point, though, is like we started using a node colon namespace internally, and in the ESM loader, it's exposed. So you can import like node colon fs/promises today in ESM. We just don't have that feature over in CommonJS land. And I think that, an intermediary steps that we could start with and then decide if it's Semver Major or not is porting that feature over to CJS. And then the following thing after that would be deciding whether or not we're enforcing the namespace for new modules, which could make backporting module, like, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about whether it would be an issue, but
I think that's a great idea for a long-term solution. I think I don't think there's any viable argument for delaying the backporting of these three modules on those grounds, because they're going to land in 16 anyway.
Yeah, and I think with that in mind, though, like the biggest difference today compared to like, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when we had this conversation in Berlin and it was very controversial, was like, we now do ship a namespace in Node. It's not like broadly, like it's not supported in CommonJS, but it is in ESM. It's there. I don't think we can remove it. So like we can bike shed all we want, or people can talk about what would be the better sigil, but like we're shipping something today.
Yeah,
so
it would totally make sense to get that namespace, get the same namespace into CommonJS, and then even just documentation deprecate, like, just, always use the namespace for internal modules.
Well, I think what we'd need to do is figure out a way after doing that new modules can be added that are not exposed outside of the namespace, essentially. So I think it would be those two steps, but like what we could do is an incremental step. And I could try to find time to do this, but this is not me licking the cookie. So if other folks want to do it first, please do. But I could explore looking at getting the support for this into CommonJS, which seems like the first iteration that we have to do no matter what.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't see why we'd use anything different. That would just be confusing, right? So.
Yes, one name, please. Just one.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if the name is Fahukwa Gods instead of Node, just one, please.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I see you.
So, okay, so is there more, like this one, we're asking specifically for people to weigh into that issue in terms of like a +1. And Miles has volunteered sort of longer term to, but not tied to this, to work on getting that CommonJS functionality in place, which I think would be a great next step. Is there anything else we need to discuss or move forward in the meeting here? No? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The next one is rename default branch from master domain or something similar 33.864. I know, Miles, you had been pushing that along. Any updates on that front?
Nothing right now. No, not at the moment.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is more visibility for TSC on performance issues. This is TSC issue 940. I raised this. I just, having discovered that we had a few issues in, I can't remember, it was 12 or 14 at this point. I just wondered and thought I'd plant the seed to see if we think we should do anything like, do we have them tagged already, and should we like maybe review them periodically in the TSC meeting? Is there anything worthwhile doing on that front, or people happy the way we are?
So, Michael, when you say performance issues, what exactly do you mean? Is it?
I guess it was like a significant basically it was reporting a fairly significant performance regression between two versions.
Okay.
Yeah, and it had been open for quite a while, and it, I guess in that case, it did require a fix in V8, but I just wondered if we should have those sort of on our radar as a TSC to make sure they move forward, move forward in some way.
Okay. So basically the issues which are reported either in the testing cycle or from the users to be kind of having direct visibility with the TSC and have some mechanism to make stable progress on that. High priority compared to other issues in the backlog.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of like, is there any reason why we should treat these differently from other ones and make them a little more visible or something like that?
Okay.
So I don't know, it doesn't sound like people have too strong a thoughts one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, if you have ideas, do it.
But I'm more just like, we could have a section in the agenda where basically like, it would be key performance issues.
Yeah, I just don't know that I mean, we could try it. I mean, it could be a strategic initiative.
Yeah, it's a little different. Like a strategic initiative is more like something longer term that we want to fix. This is more, I was just thinking about like if we have burning issues that are, significant performance regressions maybe we should just understand them more than, you know,
I mean, yeah, I mean, why is that? Why is performance? I mean, you know, why not every? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's part of what I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
right? That's why I wanted to sort of the input
I mean,
on
we
it.
could try it. I mean, you could go through and tag them, and we could just try it and see how it goes for a while. I mean, that'll probably be better than trying to figure out if it'll work or not. Just give it a shot for a month, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody? So it sounds like nobody has strong feelings, but nobody would object to us having a section on the agenda to look at
I mean,
those.
I might object after 6 weeks and then be like,
Sure.
this, but like, I'm not going to object to trying it out now.
Yep. Okay.
So one of the argument is in favor of having a insight into the performance issues is the fact that performance is tightly coupled with the V8. And if I understand correctly, V8 has test buckets for Node.js specifically, but they may be mostly on functional grounds. So it's possible that a huge performance regression seeps into Node.js without taking much notice. So it makes sense to have a look at that, but not necessarily in a weekly basis. It may not be there. So a strategic initiative does not make sense, in my opinion.
Perhaps a tracking issue that occasionally gets put on the agenda is another possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Or alternatively, if there is any performance issue reported, it could be tagged as TSC agenda.
I don't think any of them, like, you know, we have a tag, although, I mean, that's one thing. We have a tag, we could just look at those. So, I mean, I think some are probably minor, right? Or edge cases. It's just, there was some where it's like, you know, here's a major regression. And I think in that case, it actually, if you looked at Acme Air, which is, we don't run and track well now, but that was like showing something like a 40% regression. And if we believe that actually reflects real world usage, that's pretty significant. Yeah, the tracking issue that occasionally put on the agenda, that's possible. That's like once a month or something even might be makes sense. Okay, well, I'll keep it on my list to think a bit more about it, and it sounds like we can experiment with a few things, see how it goes. The audit Google account access, I know it's just been busy on the foundation side, so no update on that. Then there is number 654, potential stagnation on open issues on H1 bounty program. This one, I think Matteo opened or tagged.
I reviewed it quickly.
Yeah.
The short of it is our ecosystem HackerOne is not being well maintained, and we should consider sunsetting the program. I think that's the TLDR.
Right, was it sunsetting the
100%.
whole program or sunsetting the
third
bounty?
party? I think it was sunsetting the whole third-party HackerOne program. That was my read on it, but
The
perhaps...
ecosystem HackerOne,
Yes.
not the
Right.
core HackerOne. Yeah, agree 100%.
Okay,
Probably want to
so
pull in the security working group if I think they're still meeting and they're still a thing, but
which I think also raises a question of, if we are shutting down that program, what still remains in the charter of the ecosystem security working group? Or I know they changed their name recently. I forget exactly what it was, but that is something that we should consider in the process of this as well, because if there isn't much left in their charter, then that might be something we need to look into as well.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm just looking at the issue. It does look like some of the people who've been involved in the working group agree.
So
I'm just looking at their charter.
Someone needs to talk to Matteo and Laron probably. I don't know who else on Security WG would be point person on this kind of thing, but
so looking at this right now, it would appear under a very quick review of their charter, which I'll just drop in the chat, but the majority of the charter is based around maintaining this security program and also maintaining like the vulnerability database, which I don't want to make assumptions, but I will assume that if the HackerOne program is not super actively maintained, I don't know how actively maintained the vulnerability database is. One thing I can personally do is I can ping internally at work and see what we have in place for NPM there. We may want to just see, I guess like Sneak probably has things as well. It would likely be a good idea if we're spinning things down like this, that we follow up with where like other places people can in the ecosystem do this stuff, so that they know where they can go.
Yeah, that would be good if there are places where people can report them. It would be nice to say here, go here instead, right?
Yeah. So, Rich, if you were going to reach out to folks, can you just CC me on that email, and I'll dig in internally and see what options we have to offer, or things that we may need to do.
I was not going to reach out to people, but I will now.
Oh, well, maybe it was Michael. I didn't mean to volunteer there. I thought someone said they were going to reach out.
Okay.
I mean, I'll do it if nobody else will, but Michael's on.
I don't think anybody else volunteered. So, Rich, you're going to do it?
I mean, I would prefer a committee member do it, but I'll do it. Sure. Yes, I'll do it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that is the end of the list, which is tagged for the agenda. Let's take a quick look at the strategic initiatives. Okay, modules, anything on that front, Miles?
Yeah, so we have an open PR right now to backport the last bit of feature work that's been done on the modules side, which would be I'm trying to remember the exact name of the feature, but there's a star patterns that we have. Then there's also the CommonJS named exports feature. So those two features should be coming out in the final Semver minor before 12 goes into maintenance mode. We today just landed a stabilization of a number of the package JSON features that we've landed over the last couple months, including package exports and imports. And we're in the process of having the last little discussion of what's needed to call the ES module implementation as a whole no longer experimental. And I think I am actually one of the last holdouts there, and we're just waiting for the new CommonJS export algorithm stuff to just bake a little bit longer, because it only came out a couple of weeks ago. So just want to make sure that there's no major issues with that before we go ahead and call the implementation stable. But I think that we're in like the number of weeks before we go ahead and consider it stable.
Okay. Looking at other ones that we have people here. V8 currency, Michael, anything on that front?
I think he just left.
Ah, okay. Sorry. Build resources, I don't have an update, and I think that's all the people that we have here today. Are there any other things people want to discuss before we close out the published section? Okay, if not, thanks to everybody for taking the time. I will stop the stream. And if everybody can just stick around for a little bit, that would be good.